Hi friends. So here's our question today. Are you giving to others what they need or what they want? Or maybe another way of saying it is, are you giving to others what everybody else is giving them? Or are you giving them something different? This is something that happens in the scriptures a lot, like in Acts chapter 3, verses 1 through 10. And it's a post-resurrection account, and it's where Peter and John, after Jesus has resurrected and the church is born, and Peter and John and the rest of them are out on mission, okay? They come into the temple area, and there's this man who at the gate has been crippled there for like decades, and he's begging for alms. So he wants money. And as people pass him by, in the kindness of their hearts, they're giving him money. So Peter and John come up to this guy and see him in his crippled state, and they decide, we're not going to give you what everybody else is giving you. Here's Peter's precise words. He says, I have neither silver nor gold, but what I do have, I give you. In the name of Jesus Christ, the Nazarene, rise and walk. So he doesn't give the guy money, he gives the guy healing. Now what's the story behind all of this? Because the guy not only stands up, in fact, he starts jumping for joy as he walks into the temple, and everybody around him notices him. This is the guy who's been crippled for decades, and now he's jumping for joy, and everybody wants to know how this happened. And this leads to Peter and John preaching Jesus Christ, and it leads to, we can only imagine, many, many conversions that day. Because Peter and John decided to do something different for this man than everybody else was doing for him. And because this man was open and receptive to this. And then because this man was willing to be a witness to what God had done in his life. So let's just look at this in our own lives. Let's take, for instance, growing up kids in our present day culture and in many families. Our society has become so narrow in the way that we present to families, to children, to just people in our society in general about how we are to raise our children, right? I mean, we're just seeing that. Here's how you raise the children. Here's what the children need. Here's what they don't need. So, for instance, certainly by the agenda of our culture, in our schools, and in a variety of media, but also in action, people are telling us, even us as Christians today, that we don't need to raise our children in the ways of faith. They don't need God. And so the world's offering us a variety of different experiences that we're expected to give to our children, and that's what's going to make them into productive human beings, productive members of a human society. This is what's going to make them balanced. This is what's going to make them healthy. This is what's going to make them accepted. This is what's going to prepare them for a job, and so on. And it's the same litany. It's the same laundry list, right? So, for instance, we've got to push our kids to get the best education possible and to get the best grades possible so they can go off to college. And they all have to go to college, of course, but do they all have to go to college? I mean, our world needs, for instance, people who are involved with the trades to do all the trades in order to do plumbing and electric and roads and engine. Well, anyways, my point is that we have this very narrow list, right? And everyone has to get a college education. And along the way, of course, they have to be involved with multiple activities in order to build up their resume for them to be sent off to college. So a lot of families feel the pressure of having their kids in multiple sports and multiple extracurricular activities like band or music or musicals or plays or art or whatever. Now here's the thing. None of that's bad. Like, that's good that we want to give education to our children and that we have the ability to give education to our children. And it's good that kids are learning the value of being competitive and being on a team and working towards a goal, or being involved in the performing arts and feeling good about themselves, that they've excelled in an area. Those are all good things. But when those are the only things, and those replace the one thing that is supposed to be above all that and before all that and more important than that, and gives us actually everything that we want to give our children, which is happiness and fulfillment in this life and the life to come, Jesus Christ. When Christ gets kicked to the curb because we're offering to our children everything that we're expected to give to them, then there's going to be problems, right? Because it's not just those things. It's they have to wear certain clothes. They have to have a certain look. They have to act in certain ways. And of course, all of this gets translated into the mind of the child too. This is the way I'm supposed to act. This is the way I'm supposed to live. This is the type of friends I'm supposed to have. This is how, many things I'm supposed to be involved with. They have, a PlayStation, so I'm supposed to have a PlayStation. They have these handheld gadgets, so I'm supposed to have that. They have X amount of vacations every year, so I'm supposed to have that. And on it goes, as presented through movies, as presented through songs, as presented through our neighbors, as presented through whatever, right? And I'm just naming a few things, but it's this very narrow but long list that is a very common list, and we're all reading off the same list. Well, here's what happens with Peter and John when they encounter this guy, who everybody's giving money to, which is a good thing, right? They decide to do something different. They decide to not give him money, but to give him something more than that. They decide to give him Jesus Christ and the healing power of Jesus Christ. And it moves this man from decades of being crippled and being paralyzed to standing up and jumping for joy and being the means by which God knows how many other people come to Christ because of what happened in him and what he was willing to witness to other people. And I think it's the same thing for us today if we look at this in a spiritual parallel. And that is giving our kids more than what we're expected to give them and what they're expecting to receive. And not just what they think they want or even what they think they need or what we think we need and want to give to them or are capable of giving them, and giving them more, giving them better. Doesn't mean we can't give these other things to them in proportion, in reason, in balance, but secondary, not primary. And then what happens to this man is this man's life is completely transformed, completely changed, and he becomes the change agent for so many other people. And it's the same, I think, that we're supposed to be doing. And I'm using the example of kids, but isn't it the same that we're supposed to be doing with our spouses, with our brothers and our sisters, with our fellow parishioners, with our fellow classmates in our schools, or our fellow teammates, or with our best friends or our group of friends? Aren't we supposed to be treating our friends differently? Aren't we supposed to be expecting something different of them and expecting something different of ourselves in relationship with them, and instead of acting like every other friend treats that friend as a friend, or every other spouse acts in relationship based upon what we're viewing and what we're reading? When we really boldly step out and stop acting like everyone else and start acting like, disciples and disciple makers, which was who Peter than John was. When we start living our lives like that, we can bring healing and wholeness into the lives of so many other people. I mean, going back to our kids, just look at the state of our kids today. It's an alarming state. We hear all the statistics, and we all have the same concern. And in a day and age where our kids are receiving so much from us as a society, just have so much available to them, and are involved in so many activities and just so many opportunities that they're actualizing, they are more anxious than they've ever been. They're the most unhappy generation. They're the generation that's struggling the most with depression. They're so afraid of making mistakes. They're so afraid of commitment, and they're, well, what are they? They're more and more increasingly paralyzed and crippled to really become fully the persons that they had the potential to become. In a secular sense, definitely, but also all the more in a religious sense. If we would just go back to what it is that not the world expects us to give to them or for them to receive, but what God is capable of giving them, wants for them, and wants them to learn to desire and hunger and thirst for. And that's Him. When we stop acting like everyone else and start acting like not just Christians, but disciples of Jesus Christ and disciple makers, then we can bring to our children and our friends and our co-workers and so many, our neighbors and so many other people, exactly what our world is desperate for. We can bring to them healing and wholeness, power, hope, strength, life, a purpose and a meaning, rather than kind of listlessly running around from one thing to the next, hoping to find ourselves in that thing. We can and are capable of giving them so much more, right? I love that Peter and John did something different. They saw everyone giving this guy money and thought that that was the answer. And they said, listen, we don't have it and we're not going to give it to you. But what we are going to give you is Jesus Christ. And in the name of Jesus Christ, rise. It's interesting, I'll end with this. The Greek word that Peter uses as he speaks to this man when he says rise is the same word that produces resurrection. I'm going to give your life resurrection. I'm not just going to raise you out of your physical, crippled, paralyzed state. I'm going to resurrect your life. And that's not just what our kids need, but everyone who's important to us and so many other people in this world who we don't even know. Don't they deserve the resurrection rather than just the life that we just keep throwing at them and hoping that they'll be happy with? God has so much more to give, and so do we as Christians. Until next time, friends.